I think we're going to go ahead and get started. I just want to welcome you all here today, and we want to give a big thank you to all of our sponsors. Be sure and visit their tables at lunch and during our extended networking breaks this afternoon. Just know that we use the conferences app on our on-site check-in for CPE credit, and that is at https:// texascpa2.cnf.io. If you did not check into the conference at registration, please do so now. You've got to check in for each session to earn CPE credit. So just make sure you're checking into each of those sessions because that's going to be important. Also, please complete the session evaluations throughout the day. You can do this by clicking home, then select the session you attended, and a blue box will pop up that reads evaluate this session. Session evaluations help us continue to provide quality education to our attendees, so they're important, so please do those as well. Also, just to let you know, there are power strips located on each table should you need to charge your electronic devices throughout this day. So just be sure you've got all of that taken care of. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Matt Gilbert. Matt Gilbert's mission is to demystify M&A for business owners and their advisors. As the founder and owner of several very successful businesses, he brings a different level of experience to owners, shareholders, and advisors of privately held businesses when it comes time to plan and execute what is likely their most important business transaction, which is the sale or transfer of the asset representing the culmination of their life's work. Thus, he learned M&A in the trenches where his personal net worth and life's work were at stake. And because of this, he sees M&A differently the way your clients do. So, with that.
Can you guys hear me on this? Okay. I am going to turn this off. We had a grandbaby overnight, and my parents and siblings and 500 other people are texting me right now, so I'll put that down for a minute. So, little boy, mom and baby are both healthy, so we'll do this, and then I'll run back over there. This morning we're going to talk about M&A. I assume a lot of you guys are public accountants with business owner clients. And I have a tremendous amount of experience with M&A personally. 5 companies have been founded at my kitchen table. The first 4 were sold. The one that you see the name right there of is still active. The first one and the last one were built quite large. We made acquisitions to grow our businesses, and they were both exited to public companies who bought our business. The 2 in the middle also founded in my kitchen table and grew quite large and were exited to private equity firms. So over about a 30-year career, we were able to crank up those 4 businesses and be successful and get into a lot of M&A activity. I will tell you most of my early experiences were being in second or third place and not being the eventual winner of the M&A event. And so it's something, a craft that you learn over time, and there are skills. There's a lot of unscrupulous players out there who take shortcuts and things like that. And so one of the things that I really, really enjoy doing is educating other business owners and their advisors on how to do this well, because most people never get a shot at this, but the ones that do typically only have one shot at it. They built one company over decades, family businesses or privately held companies, and it's an important milestone in a business owner's life or in a shareholder group's life. So getting it right is a big deal. And increasingly, there are resources, there are schools, there are people teaching ways to get to business owners and take advantage of them at this stage of their life. And what we find is most business owners, when you speak with them, even though you guys may not feel this way, they will say that their closest advisor, their closest confidant is their CPA. And I find that a little bit humorous. I'll tell you some stories along the way. But because they find you guys to be their closest business confidant when it comes to this particular topic, you guys are numbers guys. This is about math and selling business. There's a disconnect. You may only just compile their taxes and talk to them once a year. They will tell me that you know everything about their business and you're intimate with their P&L and stuff like that. And so when a business owner speaks to their accounting professional about usually the first time about the thoughts of, what am I going to do? How am I going to transition out? What does an exit look like? What's the process like? It's typically a very casual mention, kind of feeling you out to see, if you're going to take the bait. And what we've learned is that you guys can't take that as a casual interaction. You have to really, your antenna has to go up and you have to say, hey, that was a casual way of bringing me into that conversation. But I know that this person has really been thinking about this a lot and they count on me for sound advice. And so what we find is there's really not much education out there for folks in your profession for how to talk to your business owner clients when they come to you and say, hey, I'm thinking about selling my business. What's the process like? What's the best practice? How do we go about this? And truthfully, on the other side of the coin, there's a whole industry set up with very rigid and experienced practices for reaching these same business owners and catching them at this kind of vulnerable stage and taking advantage of them. So the relationship that you guys have had with these business owner clients is something that is really important to them. And when they come to you with this casual thought, it's often something that catches you off guard or catches that accounting, and then they give some advice, and then the business owner turns and starts Googling things on the internet and talking to their brother-in-law, and it just kind of spirals out of control from there. So good morning, everybody. If you aren't from Houston, I'll tell you real quick. Galleria and Uptown is about 5 minutes south of here. You can't walk, you can drive. But if you want to go get a good Christmas present or a great meal, 5 minutes that way this afternoon or this evening will be good. I'm going to start. I stole this this slide from a guy named Seth Godin. Seth cracks me up, and basically this is a bat, right? Everybody knows what it is, but we're kind of afraid of it. We don't really know that much about bats. And what I thought was pretty clever with Seth is that it's memorable, right? And so if you take this bat and you turn him upside down, he looks like a superhero. And Seth actually said he's a bat ass, which I thought was pretty funny. And so then we found another picture of these three guys, and if you flip them over, it looks like they're at a party. And so the reason I'm showing you these bats is kind of silly, but it's to give you, a visual that if you look at something from a different perspective, then there's a lot to glean from it, right? And so that's what we want to do with you guys from an M&A standpoint today, is we just want to talk about maybe some things that are happening in the marketplace, best practices, ways for you guys to steer your clients when that conversation comes around. And that's what we're all about today. So here's the deal. A business owner, I every year between Christmas and New Year's, I'm kind of a data nerd. I sit down and I run all the statistics for the year for our business. And I know that last year I talked to 137 business owners personally about the very first conversation, or one of the very first conversations that they had about what is it like to go down this M&A path. How should I look at this? What's my business worth? How do I know that's true? What do buyers do? Where does the money come from? Are there earnouts? Just all these questions that are running through business owners' minds. And what I found almost exclusively is in really quizzing them and getting close to them is they talk to you guys before they talk to me, right? And and what they got from their accounting professionals was just kind of all over the board. Some people said, "Good." I'll tell you a story. My CPA, I've been with him about 15 years. His brother-in-law owns a business in Oklahoma. His brother-in-law calls him and says, "Hey, I want to sell my business. What do I do?" My CPA says, "Go get a valuation." Sounds smart. That's actually what I would recommend. Problem is, he didn't go any further. So, as you know, there's valuations for shareholder agreements and divorce and IRS defense and wealth planning and all that stuff. Well, he finds an industry expert. Remember, he's in Oklahoma. The industry expert's in San Diego. He pays $60,000 for this valuation, which is kind of the going rate nowadays, guys. And it's a valuation that isn't really useful for M&A. It's really great for wealth planning and IRS defense, but it's the wrong valuation for us. And so I had to break the news to him when I got to him that he was all proud. He had this document that his CPA told him to get and bring to me. And it looked nice. And he also had reviewed financials he was really proud of. And both of those things are nice to have, but they don't do us much good in M&A. So evaluation, and we'll get to this a little more, and I'll just skip it when we get there. Evaluation for M&A is actually the cheapest type of valuation product you can get. They're usually 10 grandish. And all the other ones are looking in the rearview mirror. They're talking about the history, they're talking about the facts and what's happened, and putting together a defense for something. Well, an M&A valuation is looking what the buyer wants to see, which is the future, right? And so that's why most of the typical valuations that are out there aren't that great for M&A activity. And so we want to make sure that when we're giving advice like go get a valuation, that we actually take that one step further to somebody who really doesn't fathom what a valuation is and say, hey, there's a bunch of different types of valuations out there. Let's talk about what you're really trying to achieve so that we can pair you up with the right product, right? And then if you go one step further, which I won't other than this comment, there are valuation providers all over the country, and some are far better than others, as you know. And so, if you get in that situation and you want to email me, I'll share a name with you of somebody who does a really good job. We do them as well. We're pretty specific in the ones that we'll take, and we'll refer the others out to good providers. But in the valuation community, there's a lot of boilerplate stuff. There's a lot of folks who don't do a very good job. And most of the time, it's a document just to go in a file somewhere. Nobody even reads it, so it doesn't matter. But in this case, it matters a lot. So yes, the first thing we should do is suggest that our client get a valuation, but it's got to be the right kind. And so that's kind of the theme of today is when we give a little bit of advice to these guys, they're going to hang on what you say, and they're going to go try and do that, research it and figure it out. And so just going a little bit deeper, one more step in advising them will help, because at the end of this thing, when we get a buyer and we circle back to you, we're going to want to talk about tax modeling, and we're going to want to, what are we going to do with the proceeds, and how are we going to pay Uncle Sam, and, is an earnout, better than higher compensation, and all these questions are going to be coming your way as well. And so you're going to be involved in this transaction. You might as well start out on the right foot. So this is pretty obvious, right? That great outcomes are the result of proven processes. What I'll tell you is most of our business owner clients weren't very intentional when they started the business. It's a sales guy that took a couple of clients and went and hung his own shingle and started his business. It's a field guy who took a client and went and started his own business. And those businesses over the years grew, and people figured out how to be successful. And so most of our business owners, and let me tell you, my clientele is 10 million to 100 million in revenue, family-owned, privately held businesses. But everything that I'm going to tell you today applies to even smaller businesses than that. all the way down into the SBA level. And so most of these businesses weren't terribly intentional when they got started. Along the way, they started finding some success, and they figured it out, and they brought processes in, and they got, got a little more sophisticated. But planning the exit is something that very few business owners do. In fact, there's a statistic out there that says 87% of business owners have failed to plan the exit. That's a few years old. Hopefully it's lower than that now. And because of that, there's been a ton of exit advisors and BEI designations and financial planners and stuff like that pop up. And a lot of those guys have gone to school for 3 days, and now they're a financial planner helping business owners do an exit. And the pitfalls that come with that as well. And so, but there's our business owner population is aging, and most of them have not planned. And in fact, when I talk to most of them, they've kind of got their head in the sand, and the kids don't want it, or I don't trust the kids to have it. There's nobody in my management team that could run this thing as well as I do, and I just don't know how to get out. Maybe I'll just close the doors. I spoke to a business owner back in the summer who had $17 million in revenue, about $2 million in earnings, and he never found somebody like me. He ended up just closing the doors and giving his customers to a competitor. That's about just guessing. I don't know that much about his business, but on a 5x multiple, that's $10 million out of his family's, wealth that because he didn't go, deal with this stage of life. My own, I won't say who, but someone in my own family has done the very same thing, and it was frustrating to me. It was before I was doing what I'm doing now. I've been doing this about 9 years, and so just watching those things break my heart because somebody who toils their whole life. And they've provided for their family, and they've provided for their community, and they're supporting the local little league teams and everything that they do, and then to fail at this juncture is just sad. So I'm out here just kind of on a crusade to say, hey, there's a right way to do this. You can be successful in selling your business. There's a ton of equity out there and money that wants to come in and buy local and small and family-owned businesses, but you have to find the way to get into that process. And the one thing that I'll say, hopefully more than this once, is controlling the process is where the success is. Right? Great outcomes are the result of proven processes. Do not let the buyer side control the process. The seller needs to put together a team. You guys are on that team. You need to have legal, they need to have me, they need to have you, they might have to have HR or inventory consultant or a real estate appraisal or whatever. But that team around the buyer needs to control the process. And what's happening at a big scale in our country is private equity is turning out all these people who are approaching business owners direct. And a business owner gets phone calls from them, they get emails from them. It's very scientific. It's very flattering to get these calls. Say, you have a great business. We'd like to talk to you about buying your business. We're from Atlanta. Can we come in and see you? And the business owners, it's very flattering. They take the bait and they open the doors, and in comes, these buyers. The statistic that I read recently is when these tactics are taken and the business owner bypasses a process where they have control and they have a transaction advisor like my firm involved, that private equity is able to acquire these businesses up to 38% below market value. And I've seen a number of those happen. And so the day they close on the business, they've got a 38% return on their investment. So it's worth the effort that they're going to and the expense that they're going to do that. There's a company in Canada called The Value Builder. A guy named John Warlow is a friend of mine who owns that company. And a couple of years ago, right before COVID, he did a survey. He surveyed, I don't remember the exact number, but it was about 1,100 business owners 12 months after they closed the sale of their business. And more than 3/4 of them regretted the sale. And so the question was why? Well, the majority of those that regretted the sale regretted the fact that they didn't get what their business was worth because they didn't understand the process and they felt like they were poorly advised. The other ones, the leftover group, which is a smaller group, felt like that they didn't have enough options, and they sold to somebody who didn't have their values and the authenticity and and just kind of destroyed their legacy in the community. And so there's a way to do this well. There's a ton of business owners, they're hitting that age where they want to do something else. They want to retire. They want to move on. And I will tell you that most of them aren't finding the right way. Another statistic that I've found recently is 82%. This is 25 million and below enterprise value. 82% of the business owners that go to market to try and sell their business fail. Only 18% succeed. That's ridiculous because there's a buyer for every single thing out there. If you got a distressed business, there's distressed buyers. If you got a business that's losing money, there's people that buy them. But what you have to do is you have to align interests, right? Fair market value is fair market value. And so most of them don't sell because there's a misalignment in pricing. But the rest of them that don't sell is because the business owner and whoever they're working with, they're not running a process that leads to success. And there is a definite, this is an industry now, and there's a definite pathway that leads to success. And if you get on that pathway, your odds are really good. In our firm, we're very selective in who we work with, but we have over a 90% success rate in an industry that has an 18% success rate. So there's a way to do it, but you got to find that. You can't get on the list with the internet. You guys probably know this, but I'll say it. Attorneys are terrible business negotiators, and so if you get your attorney in there too early and they try to start negotiating business terms, it falls apart. Everybody has their place in this thing, and if everybody can stay in their lane, we can get these business owners a great exit. Absolutely. I see it happen frequently. Thank you for validating that. For the guys online, he said, find an attorney who does M&A transactions frequently. That if you have the wrong kind of attorney in there, they start focusing on things that don't matter and the deal blows up. And we see that quite a bit, actually. So, I will insist on my clients interviewing 3 M&A attorneys, and then they'll introduce me to their attorney, who's a family friend or a church buddy or whatever, and we'll allow that family friend or church buddy attorney to be on the team because they've got a close relationship with the business owner, and there's a trust factor there. But we want that M&A attorney in there. That's a whole specialty field, and it's crazy. I mean, we're in due diligence right now on a deal. It's very typical. We got our first due diligence request list. There are 463 questions. This is a small transaction. We have to answer 463 questions in great detail. Then we have to provide backup to prove that our answers are accurate. All right. And then and that's just the first schedule. There's going to be a legal schedule. There's going to be an HR schedule. There's going to be a real estate schedule, an inventory schedule. There'll be over 1,000 questions like that to close this particular transaction. It's about $14 million. But that's very typical. And our buyers are well-educated financial buyers nowadays. Even if they're not, they're backed, or their resources and their funding is coming from somebody like this. And so what used to be process for closing a big, $50 million transaction, now we're using those same processes to close a $5 million transaction because of the risk involved and the people who are driving the financial side of the equation. So, an SBA loan will go from $0 to $5 million to buy a small business. We see private equity coming down and getting into that space nowadays. And private equity isn't going to change their processes for the size of the deal. Last year, we sold a really nice business over here in Sugar Land, including the real estate. It was about a $7.3 million deal. The buyer spent almost $700,000 with advisors and due diligence and attorneys and accountants and people to And every one of them has an insurance policy, right? So if something goes wrong, buyer can turn back on them. They've got a recourse. That's how this business is. It's no longer just handshaking a deal and riding off into the sunset. So we'll move on. This is what a business owner had in his mind in the 80s and 90s. This concept was sold that you could sell your company, jump on a plane to Hawaii, and say sayonara. Sales don't look like that anymore. All right, in today's marketplace, almost, I want to say 100%, maybe not, but very close to 100% of the sales that we're involved in, the business owner is going to stay. At the very minimum, they're going to train the new team and the new staff. There's usually a 1 to 3 year employment agreement involved where the business owner is still on the hook. Most of them are, we're calling recapitalizations instead of a sale. So they'll sell 70 or 80% of the equity, and they'll roll that 20 or 30% in, and they'll become a minority partner with the buyer. So they've got the opportunity to keep a little bit of equity and grow with the buyer. But the buyer has to have them in there because they're financial buyers. They don't know how to operate the company, right? So the seller is going to sit on the board. They're going to be an advisor. They're going to be very involved in the business after the sale. And if you've heard second bite of the apple or one of those terms, they'll get about 70% of their equity off the table. And the sale that we're talking about, the first sale, they'll roll 20 or 30% equity and take that next 3 to 5 years with the buyer. And then when the buyer sells again, that 20 or 30% equity should be about equal to what the original 70% was, and they get paid twice. And so it sounds appealing, but the flip side of that is that business owner is going to stay involved with that business for the next 3 to 5 years with their new partner, right? And so and most of my business owners, finally we're seeing that probably most of them don't, but for years and years, most of my business owners had this in their head. And if I can't just sell it and hand the keys and take a check and get out of here, I don't want to sell it. Okay, well, nobody's going to buy it like that. So, we have to get with reality with what the market is. A lot of that is driven by the sources of capital. Who's going to loan somebody 7 or 8 figures worth of money to buy a business they don't know how to operate, right? So one of the conditions for getting the capital is that the guy who's been operating it really well stays on there and teaches you how to do it and helps you be successful. And so, that's kind of how these things are being driven these days. I like this picture. This is, to me, this is an analogy of there's 2 things that have to happen when we successfully work with a client whose business owner is thinking about selling. The first thing that has to happen is that person goes through a journey. They have owned this business, let's just say 2 decades. They get up, they go to work there every day. Their identity is tied to it. And for them to just even start considering selling this thing and not having anywhere to go every day is a big deal in their life. And so, the thoughts will creep in. They'll start searching the internet. They'll talk to you guys. They'll talk to me. They'll talk to their brother-in-law, go to conferences. This process could take 6 months to a year for them to get themselves ready to sell that business. And when they flip that switch mentally, it was a very long process of getting themselves and their partners and their spouse ready. And now they're like, I'm ready to sell my business. Let's do it. And then we turn around and we look at the business and we go, it should have gone through the same process of getting ready. You've got contracts and you've got leases and you've got storerooms that look like heck, and you probably need to spruce the place up, and you've got holes in your management team, you've got safety issues, and all these things that take away from the value of the business. I agree completely. That's exactly right. That's right. So for everybody online, he says the smaller the company, the worse shape their books are in. And I would agree that's been our experience as well. And so it takes a little time to get in there, recast their financials, clean things up. And that's every aspect of the business. You got old equipment, you got old forklifts and inventory and junk. Let's clean all that up, because when we did that valuation at the beginning of this thing, the valuation should tell us three things. It should tell us the attributes of the business that are a standout in my peer group. We're better than everybody else at these things, right? And it should tell us the attributes of our business that we're really weak at and we need to work on. And most of the attributes of that business are going to be neutral, right? So we take this period here and we say, hey, can we move any of those neutrals to a positive, or can we move any of those weaknesses to a neutral, where we're moving tangible value in that business when we do that. So just like the business owner or shareholder group had to go through this introspection period to get ready to mentally take on the fact that they're going to sell this business and do something else in their life. Well, the business is a living, breathing organism itself. It's got employees and customers and vendors and facilities and equipment and inventory and liabilities and documents. It has to go through the same thing. So it's very nice if we can get them to go through that journey simultaneously, instead of the business owner getting ready and being antsy and they're all itching to go. And then advisors like all of us have to tell them, we got a year's worth of work here before we can do this. That's a frustrating thing. So advice is, there's a journey for you personally and there's a journey for the company. And let's, hopefully, let's take those two journeys simultaneously. That's the most efficient way to do it. And it usually leads to really good results. This is a business owner speaking to an advisor. What you will find, I mentioned a minute ago that there's a whole industry out there teaching financial buyers how to go around all of us and get to business owners directly and try to earn their trust and cut a deal without that business owner getting really sound advice. And so what typically happens is, this guy will talk to those financial buyers. They'll fly back and forth and have dinner and play golf and all that stuff. And they'll get to a deal and he'll call his attorney. And he and his attorney will try to negotiate against world-class business buyers, right? It is not a wise thing. And the buyer has complete control of the process when that's happening, right? These guys buy. I got an email when I was coming in here this morning from a firm in Dallas that we interact with, and they just bought their 100th company today, right? So, and that's one private equity firm. Bought their 100th company today. They've got an amazing team that goes in there and they do a great job. But do you think that your business owner who goes to work, boots and a cowboy hat every day to work, and his attorney are going to sit there with 10 of their specialists across the other side of the table and win in that negotiation? They're not. They're just not. And it's sad to me, but it happens every day. And so for us, it's like, hey, let's get control of this process ourselves. Let's build ourselves a good team. Let's go through the checklist of doing the evaluation, getting yourself ready, getting your partnership ready, getting your documents in order, getting your financials in order, cleaning up the facility. And let's do this right where you can exit well. There is a process and it works. And I'm just going to say that over and over because that's my whole presentation is there is a process. And if you're not following it, you're going to fail. I thought Yogi Berra said this. I Googled it and some guy named Lawrence Peter said it. But if you don't know where you're going, you're going to end up somewhere else. And that's how I feel about many of these business owners that I talk to. The other thing that I will tell you is most of the business owners in our space that people like us deal with are frugal people, right? They've done well because they're cost conscious. And so when they start talking about assembling these teams of me and you and lawyers and consultants and things like that, and they think about the expense of that, it's a turnoff, right? And so all of a sudden the business owner starts looking for a cheaper way to run this process, and they're focused on the cost instead of the value. And I'll get to that hopefully in a second, but I was involved in a transaction a few years ago where and just so you know, to sell a $30 million company, you're probably going to have a couple of $1 million in expenses, right? Well, this guy was trying to save $500,000-$600,000 in expenses, and that drove him to a $16 million offer. And fortunately, we were able to talk, turn the offer down, said, hey, if you'll spend the money with the right team and the right process and really invest in this, and he ended up investing about $400,000 or $500,000 more dollars, but he got $9 million more dollars for the sale of his company, right? So don't trip over the pennies or the dollars to pick up the pennies. It's there's a system out there that works. It's not cheap, but it leads to fantastic results, right? And people who want to be frugal, they can be, but they've got to be smart, right? And the smart thing to do is to focus on the tangible goal. So going into thinking about selling my company, the very first thing that I ask somebody is, well, what are your objectives of getting rid of the company? There's probably a financial objective. You probably have family members that work there. You may own the real estate and have an idea that you want to be a landlord and have mailbox money after you sell and let the buyer lease the property. What about your legacy? What are the objectives that you're trying to achieve in selling this business? What about your personal time, your freedom? Are we going to sell to somebody who's going to require you to come to the office 3 days a week, or do you want me to sell to somebody that you can phone in from Hawaii? I need to know what those objectives are, and if you can't articulate them to me, you're not ready to move forward. That's step number one, right? And so when we ask our client, what are your objectives? Sometimes it takes them 6, 7, 8 months to sort through that because it's crazy. And then other times they'll say, my business partner just got a cancer diagnosis, got 6 weeks to live. I can't do this by myself. Okay, that's cut and dry. We know what we're faced with. But most of the time, it's like, we just had our first grandbaby and I don't see my wife anymore. She's always over there. And well, that's not good enough. We've got to get more clear than that. So what are the objectives they're trying to achieve? And then what is the value of your business? If you could do anything, get people to articulate what they're trying to achieve when they want to sell their business. And then can you defend the value of the business that you think? I know you talked to your brother-in-law who sold his company and you went to a conference in Vegas and you have an idea what that company's worth, but you can't defend that. So can we get you in a position to where we can defend the value? And what you'll find many times, the smaller the business, the higher the value they think it is, and they're out of whack with the marketplace. I got a $4 million business and I want 10 for it. The market says it's worth 3. You see that all the time. The bigger the business, it's the other way. Well, they think, well, this thing's worth 20 million. No, it's not. It's worth 60. And so everybody's wrong about what the value of their business is until they go run through a process and figure out exactly how it is valued and how it could be financed if it were to be bought. That's really, really important. And then how do we defend that? So if we can understand the objectives and we can get to a defendable valuation, now we have a fantastic starting point where we can control the process and we can design a game plan to go achieve those goals. Without knowing the goals, how are we going to achieve them? Without knowing the valuation, we're going to be at the mercy of the market, right? And so those are, when you guys are, and I know you guys aren't intimate in this process most of the time, but you're steering, they trust you, you're steering these people, and you need to steer them to, this is an industry that will take advantage of you if you don't do it well, right? Do not try to do it on your own. And then the last thing is, once you kind of got these two in place, or in our case, if you come to us and as an advisor, we will help you figure these two things out. We have processes and the ability to do that. But, align your client with a great transaction advisor. And you're going to spend probably a year with that advisor. So it needs to be somebody that you can trust with your most intimate secrets and knowledge. And, a lot of people, especially in smaller companies, every business owner, this, they have beach houses and horses and boats and vacations and stuff they're running through the P&L. Nobody cares about that. It's common, right? But you can't hide it from your advisor, right? We need to know everything. You got to be open and honest, and there's a way for us to deal with that, package it. Most of that is going to be an add back, which is in your favor. If you get 4 times EBITDA for your business, and you spent, $1 million on all that stuff, well, that's $4 million more I can get for you, but I got to know about it, right? And so we have a very arduous process at the beginning of our relationships with our clients, where we got to go, root canal everybody and get all that information out on the table so that we know exactly what we're dealing with. We can't design a successful process if there are surprises, right? And so, finding an advisor that you can be completely forthright and comfortable, honest with is a very big deal. So this is a fun video. Business owner, you guys probably see the numbers. You never see what happens in the marketplace, right? It's kind of a long video, so I'm going to talk through it. But this guy is he's a entertainer, right? And his ice cream stand is popular. Not because he has the best flavor, not because he has the greatest location, not because who his vendors are. This place is popular because of him. So I'll shut up for a minute, just let this play. It's kind of long, about 2 minutes, but it's entertaining. Okay, so that's cute. My point showing that video is if you guys are just analyzing the numbers, if the valuation people are just analyzing the numbers, nobody knows why this particular ice cream stand is popular. If you sell that business to somebody who can't do that, what's going to happen to the business? Right? It's going down the tubes. If you buy that business, right? If you're advising a buyer, if the buyer can't do that, he's the wrong buyer. And so, there's this whole other side of the business that us numbers folks don't see that's really, really important to the tangible value and the future success. I guarantee you there's a private equity firm in Atlanta right now who's running the numbers on this little ice cream stand, and they're saying, we can put these in every city. Look at the margins. Look at the, no, you can't, because you got to replicate that guy, right? And so it's a big deal to take in all the information and understand everything that's going on, and then evaluate how are we going to transfer that value to the next person, and how are we going to get a lender to get behind loaning money for that to come to our client so that we can move on. And I just go back to telling you it's a complex, there's a lot of variables, but there is a pathway to success. Let's see what we got next year. Okay, I put up all these houses here. We're going to pretend these houses are businesses. does any of these businesses look any more special than the other, right? If you got a Subway franchise, is it better than all the other Subway franchises? It's many businesses out there are commodities, and often, let's just say our client owns that business right there. Is that business more valuable than that business? I can't see it. I don't get it. The math probably doesn't prove it out in the financials. And so when they go to exit their business, how are they going to stand out and get an above market return? How are they going to, if somebody in San Diego runs the valuation on this thing and tells them it's worth a certain amount, but they didn't know that it's sitting in this neighborhood with all these other commodities around it, then the business owner gets this figure in their head that's unrealistic, right, that we can't achieve. So there's a lot to figure out. And I went through a business on the Galveston Strand like this. I won't say which one. You guys probably been there. But there's a lot of businesses on the Galveston Strand, and they're all kind of similar. And this particular individual had somebody in Omaha do the valuation, and they were all excited. And I was like, has this Omaha person ever been to the Strand? Because I hate to break it to you, but your business and the two next door are similar. And so, there's just a whole lot to deal with. So you could find somebody who will take this business, write it up to look like that, and list it on the internet, right? And you can find people who will want to buy this, and they'll come along and they'll say, oh, it's that? But you told me it was this when you wrote it up. And you get offers for this, and then they find out it's that, and the deal never closes, right? There's a lot of tricky, disingenuous stuff going on in this market, and all it does is serve to harm our client, right? Our client needs to know they got a commodity business. Now, if they want to spend a couple of years and work on that business and transform it and turn it into this, we can sell this. This is very unique. It's going to go for a premium, right? But if they're not going to work on the business, or they don't have time or the ability or management team or whatever, and we're trying to sell that, we're getting a commodity price for it, right? And they need to know that. So, setting themselves up for disappointment is happening all over the marketplace, because we have people telling our business owners something they want to hear instead of what reality is. The reality is this home or business is no better than all the other ones in this neighborhood, and it's definitely not that. And if we take 3 years and we go to work on it, we could turn it into this. Maybe we can sure try, but we're not going to sell it next month or in 2 months or first quarter of next year, looking like that for the price you get for this. And that happens. Just the disappointment in the marketplace is rampant, and that's why 82%. That's the statistic I quoted a minute ago. 82% of businesses that come to market are misaligned in price, and they're trying to get this price for that. It's never going to happen. So they fail to sell, right? And it's just it's a function of people having misplaced expectations, and we're the guys who help set the expectation, right? So that's just a little visual. Can I just help me out? Everybody raise your hand. Okay, that's pretty weak, but thank you. Can we go higher? Yeah, and how about one more? Higher? Okay, I got about 5 of you went really high. Thank you. So here's the thing. In business brokerage, which are the smaller companies, intermediary services, which are, $10 to $50 million sales, transaction advisory up to about $100 million, and investment banking even bigger. Most of our clients are on the small end of that, right? 50 million, 25 million and below. And so what you have in my peer group is business brokers, intermediaries, transaction advisors, most of whom have never operated a business, most of whom aren't very good negotiators, most of whom are small shops that don't have a lot of in-house resources. And so when they get a couple of offers for the business, they jump on one, right? And it's a transaction. To most transaction advisors is an event that they get paid for, and so they want to have a bunch of those. And so business processes by transaction advisors are set up, a lot of them, to do quantity. And there's internet brokerages and there's franchise brokerages and things like that. And so when everybody raised their hand about right here, a transaction advisor selling that thing says, hey, I got a bunch of buyers. Let's pick 3 or 4 of those and let's try to go get it closed, right? But a good transaction advisor says, hey, which one of you buyers really want it? And right, and so about half of you didn't participate, so you guys are out. The half that did participate, right? Now we've got a tighter group of people who want to buy this thing more, and somebody that we can push and we can begin to leverage. How can we get a better value for our client or better deal terms for our client? And then out of that, inevitably, and this is what investment bankers do way up in the big transactions, but very few people do in these smaller transactions, that it should be done everywhere. Inevitably, there's going to be 3 or 4. In this room, there was about 5 of you that really stretched up, right? Well, I want to go to those 5 of you and I say, you're a special buyer. This is the business for you, and really push the terms for our client as far as we can. And if you take the time to run that process, it adds 2, 3, 4, 6 months to the process. But in the scenario I told you about earlier, the price went up by $9 million by doing that, right? And so there's when you align with a transaction advisor, you want to find somebody who's a fantastic negotiator, who puts together a great process, who can get to the buyers who really want this thing, that there's a fit in maybe their operation, that our client's business fills a hole. So 1 + 1 = 3. Or they have a geographical need, and so they're more motivated than everybody else. Or maybe several times I've sold a key marquee customer account that the buyer really can't penetrate that customer, so they're going to buy this business so they can have access to that customer. Those are the buyers that are more motivated than anybody else to sell. The terms and conditions and reps and warranties on our client will be less onerous. They will share the risk instead of trying to transfer risk. They'll negotiate with us on favorable tax treatment. Those are the buyers we want to transact with. If you're running a process and you're just going with the average M&A broker who takes that first round and they try to find a buyer out of that group, first thing you're going to find is most of those buyers can't even close the deal, right? So you're going through all this process just to find out that buyer fell off a cliff. You got to back up. You got to find another one. You got to go through it again. The other thing is those processes are very cookie cutter oriented, and they're not customized. And I will tell you, if you only own one business and you only sell it one time, you want a customized process to sell it. You don't want to be falling into a cookie cutter type transaction process, because a customized process designed to smoke out the very best deal, the best buyer, the highest price, somebody who's going to appreciate the legacy that you bring to the community and honor that and employ your kids. That's a big deal. Most of our business owners, when they sell their company, they still go to church, Walmart, grocery store in the same community that they've always worked in. And they see their employees, and now they're their ex-employees. They see their spouses. They see all those people they interacted with in the community. And if there's some new guys running the business and running their name in the ground, that's embarrassing and not fun. And everybody in the community looks at the guy who sold the business and say, why do you sell it to them? And so there's a lot of pressure on these business owners to get this right. And I just over and over, there are processes where we can help them actually get it right. So thanks for going through that. A minute ago, I told you that buyers come with a team of experts. And very often we will, at near closing, during due diligence, we'll have what we call an all hands on deck meeting. Big, huge conference table in some lawyer's office, and they'll come filing in, and there'll be a real estate person, and an accounting person, and an HR person, and an inventory person. Certainly they'll have legal, they'll have the business owner, might have his right-hand man, and there's going to be 7, 8, 10, 12 consultants and people on the buyer's team, right? if your business owner client and their two-person team walk in and sit down, and they've got to be real estate experts with this guy and HR experts with this person and legal experts with this person, they're going to get fleeced in this process. There's just no way. And so making sure that, we can go toe to toe with the buyer's team and defend our opinion of value and extract everything that we want is a big deal. Now, you don't have to put that team together too early. You put it together too early and everybody's billing their hourly fees and you can't afford it. But there is a moment in time where we have to assemble a team like that and say, hey, we're going to go and battle with these guys. We're going to negotiate all the final points. And the final points are probably like 50 items. A purchase agreement we're working on right now is 119 pages for not a very big business, but they're just involved nowadays. And so, you don't want to walk in and face a team like this who have been trained from birth to come in here and do this and face that for the very first time. And so a business owner doesn't have this vision in their head at the outset of the process that getting over all these hurdles and getting through all this is what it takes to be successful. So we have to help them understand that you have to control the process. You have to assemble a team to be successful. And if you do, and you're going to have to invest in it a little bit, right? You're going to have to, you probably spend a couple of $100,000 getting to this point. And then when you close and you get your big money, you're going to have to give a significant portion of that over to Uncle Sam and all your advisors and pay everybody success fee. But it's worth it if you do it well. So this is really interesting to me. There have been bicycle races in France since the 1880s. And this was a couple of years ago. 130 years later, somebody finally thought outside the box. This guy was losing the race, and he says, well, I want to win more than everybody else. He gets aerodynamic. He goes on to pass all of his peers. You'll see in a minute here, he's going to pass the front guy. Then he's going to pass the pace car, which is a motorcycle. And so it's very interesting to me that it took 135 years of racing bicycles for somebody who was losing to think outside the box and find a way to win. And that's adapting to your circumstances while you're in the middle of those circumstances, right? And super impressive. It's kind of a goofy video, but watch the motorcycle guy. He's like, wait a minute. And if we let that video play, he goes way down the road, but then the motorcycle finally gets aerodynamic and he finally catches him and passes him. But this guy ends up winning whatever race that was in France because he's the first guy in 135 years to think outside the box, right? And he was losing and he had to change his strategy on the fly. He's going to try something. He had the guts. He could have been embarrassed. He could have wiped out. He's got a wife at home who's ducking her head and doing this until it works, right? And now he's successful and he wins. And to me, that's what the kind of the fourth quarter of an M&A sale process looks like, is we're doing something goofy, adapting like that all the time to continue to, keep this thing on track, extract value for our client, make sure that liability transfer and things like that aren't one-sided, in the buyer's favor. Certainly tax treatment is always a big conversation. So again, you guys are the CPAs and the financial people, but these business owners, if you will speak to them with some confidence that, there is a process and we need to go align ourselves with some people who know how to do this, interview people until we find some that we're comfortable with, then you'll be a great confidant and a great advisor to them. I really don't have anything to review. So if you guys have any questions, before we do, I forgot to put this in there. This is the funniest headline I think I've ever seen. It was in 2020 when Portland and Detroit and other places were on fire. And it says protesters are criticized for looting businesses without forming private equity first. And that kind of sums up my life right there. So anyway, if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them, or if there's any online.